Welcome to My Boulevard podcast, where we talk about everyday issues from a biblical and balanced perspective. I'm Dhati Lewis, and this season we're diving into fighting for the faith in today's culture, navigating deconstruction and reconstruction, and featuring the voices of poets, pastors, practitioners, and polymaths. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy today's episode. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of This Is My Boulevard. I am here. It is interesting because I'm catching up with an old friend. We just start calculating the years of how long we've known each other. My man, Anthony Flynn. And so it's good for us to connect and see each other again.
Absolutely, brother. Thanks so much, man. Let me just start off always by saying, you know how much I admire you and appreciate you and your leadership. You represent so much in terms of character and leadership and just, man, the consummate man of God, the consummate leader. And I have so much respect for you, brother. So I'm glad to be here with you.
Yeah, man. Well, you know, the feeling is mutual. This was for the audience sakes, you know, our journey, but the audience sakes, he is a man that I actually met when we were planting Blueprint Church, and you know, in that time, and he was actually coming to Atlanta to consider planting a church, and he came here planting a church, him and his lovely bride and children, like this, to plant a church, and it was in the midst of that God took him on a different journey, and I am so grateful for that because he has been someone that has been very instrumental, right, in my life. And so throughout that journey, even though we met under a different pretense, but throughout that journey, he has helped me in so many pivotal times in my life. Throughout my time at earlier on with Blueprint, we brought him in many times to come and help us to overcome a hurdle or an obstacle or a leadership challenge we were facing. When I was at the North American Mission Board, I brought him in multiple times to help us with challenges and issues and problems that we faced in ministry. There are things that we were trying to accomplish. When I left Sin Network and started My Boulevard, I talked with him about that transition. And, you know, and many times since then, he is someone that I respect dearly. He's someone I respect and wanted to introduce him to you guys. He is a man of God, as he said, he is, but he is someone who God has taken him on a different journey than the traditional pastor, someone who was in the church world and, you know, than most of us. And that's really what I want to talk with him today, is about some of that journey, some of that tension, some of that wrestle, and especially in a season like we're in today, you know, that we're in now, because since COVID, I've met with so many pastors, so many leaders that have left full-time ministry and went to more of a vocational or social entrepreneurship, or even just the for-profit space. And then I've had people who are working in the for-profit space that have now felt a call to the church. And so I've seen this world, kind of people involving in and out. But a lot of times what it has to do with is money, with resources, how to provide for your family. There's many verses in the Bible that talks about money and resources, but for somehow in the church, we struggle when it comes to this, you know. And I'm not just talking about making money. I'm talking about all of it, how we make it, how we spend it, how we utilize it, like all the ends that that comes to it. And so I wanted to bring in Flynn to talk about that. And so let's just kind of start there. Tell us a little bit about your journey, you know, and a little bit more detail of just kind of when I met you in Atlanta to even kind of bringing us up today and what you currently do.
Yeah, I think it's important that I go back even a little bit further, if you don't mind. And because to paint a picture and give context, you know, because you brought up this whole concept of money, right? And all of us have kind of a money story in our relationship with money. So I was born to a teenage mother in poverty. My mom was 16 when she got pregnant with me, had me the summer before her senior year of high school. And it's crazy for me to even say that, considering I have 2 college students. But nonetheless, man, so my relationship with money was tainted in many ways. I didn't really have a healthy relationship with money. So fast forward, because I won't bore everybody with a ton of details, but I eventually went to college, majored in business, was a corporate guy, you know, initially had, you know, was promised the world, Dhati, I was going to make millions of dollars. And that is not an exaggeration. I graduated student of the year. My major was, you know, intern of the year for a top-notch internship program first job out of college, had the #1 sales territory in America for a Fortune 100 company. So I was on track, right, to make millions of dollars. And then I found out pretty quickly that I was trying to fill a God-sized hole with everything but God. And so I thought that money and power and success, if you will, considering that I wasn't walking with Jesus at that time, I thought, man, this is the answer to life's problems. I'm going to make millions of dollars. I'm going to be a star CEO of some major corporation, blah, 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 right? That was the dream. And brother, every day I was getting up while I was thriving and having success in business, I was miserable on the inside. Yeah. And so I walked away from it all, Dhati. It took $25,000 a year and no benefits to go help plant a church in Memphis, Tennessee, my home city. Yeah. And you know the story back there. Myself and the lead pastor, we were the first 2 full-time people. We grew that church from 60 volunteers to over 10,000 members in a matter of 4 years. We moved 5 times in 4 years. Outreach magazines, fastest growing churches 3 years in a row, top 20, blah, 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 right? All of that. And then that's when it hit me about that 5th year is when I started to wrestle with this idea that, man, I could keep going down this path and just be a ministry guy. But what about all this business acumen / passion that I have? And so I decided at that point that I wanted to merge those 2 worlds together. And so to really fast forward, when you see where I am today, okay, so you asked me to talk about Atlanta. What brought me to Atlanta was essentially some point of convergence of that, because you may or may not remember, I was actually running a national nonprofit organization where I was COO and designed to be CEO. So I was there to succeed. So I was using my business acumen, but in a ministry context.
Yes.
And as you have discussed, Dhati, again, I'm wrestling with this whole idea that, you know, in ministry, a lot of us have this poverty mindset. Like we're supposed to be poor and be Mother Teresa in order to really make an impact and dent on the kingdom. And that just never sat well with me. Yeah. And so over the course of time, I put a bow on it right here to say, over the course of the years, that led to me saying, you know what, I'm going to have my hands in the business, ministry, parachurch, nonprofit. It can all work together on behalf of the kingdom of God. And so that's essentially where I am today in summary.
Right. And that's what I love about your story is that the Lord in that journey has taken you, like you said, in church, nonprofit, for-profit, ministry, parachurch, all those different spaces. You have led in those spaces and you have wrestled with that tension, that merger between the two. Because even as a church, I mean, you guys had restaurants and you had different for-profit or, you know, profit entities in the church. So that is something that you've always kind of wrestled with and always tried to bring those worlds and not just feeling okay about this, like the poverty mentality. I know, you know, you talked about like, what do you call that in your world where it just feels like you got to be poor in order to do good?
Oh, the nobility trap.
Yeah. The nobility trap. Yeah. You know, talk about that a little bit.
Well, yeah, just that there is this sensation in the ministry world, you know, church world particularly, where, you know, there's a division between, you know, hey, money is evil in many ways, even though we know that's not the case, right? And the irony of all of that is that all the churches I know, in some sense, need money in order to keep the lights on and keep the ministry moving. But yet, from a leadership side, we will go destitute, and we will say, hey, you know, you're serving the kingdom better in many ways the less money you have. And somehow we haven't been able to, you know, bring the 2 worlds together in leadership. And as a matter of fact, and I won't get into details, but just to bring that to light, I was even with someone just yesterday, a very wealthy person, and we were having a conversation about how I can tell you a number of times where through some of my nonprofit work, as we have been successful, more churches have pulled out, right? Meaning we're not giving money anymore to you or to that institute, because it's kind of a weird dynamic. The more success you have, the more the church wants to pull back instead of actually lean in. So very interesting.
And it is interesting because when Christians and we talk about money, I think it's really interesting because of that dynamic of resources and money. We know we need it, but we don't like to talk about it with acts. We don't expect to talk about it. And here's the thing. What I've learned is that most pastors, leaders, nonprofit, we don't run the church in the same way we would run our family, right? Like even manage the resources in our family, because we know that we gotta, if you don't work, you don't eat. There's certain expectations, things, there's certain goals, there's desires. You want to purchase this house, or you want to buy this, and like there's savings, like a lot of different things that we do that we don't even apply those principles. Like if we can just apply the principles that we know to be true within stewardship in our home and apply it to the church, it would just give so much freedom, both for people like me who are running the organizations, but also people who are giving to these organizations because of that dynamic. Because I mean, just think about it. Like I'm in my house, and I was just talking to Angie the other day, and I was just like, hey, like, do you want to like change up some things? Like we've been in the same, do you want to expand this, or do like that takes money? That's a financial decision that we're making. And but it's interesting that in the church, people don't expect like, yeah, hey, there's like, we've been using the same toys in the children wing for 10 years. Do you guys ever think about we better upgrade? There's like, well, that takes money, right? And then so where's that money coming from? It comes like you got to ask for it. You have to. So there is all of that dynamic, but oftentimes people, as soon as someone like me talks about money, it's already all the church does is talk about money, right? And then there's that kind of, but on the flip side, but you have worked with people like me because you helped me in this, because when I came out of Sin Network, I was coming to my Boulevard, and I was just like, man, I'm doing this thing. And here's the two things that I remember saying. I was just like, two things. One, I'm feel called to the urban context, but I also feel like two things. One, Christians don't like paying for anything. And then the second thing is that urban Christians like even paying less for stuff, right? And I was just like, but I feel like this is my calling to this ministry, and really thinking through, okay, how do I go about doing this? And so I was just talking about, well, I'm like a nonprofit, and you start, well, have you thought about social entrepreneurship and like terms and words and things? And so I ended up falling in kind of doing a both and, but some of the things I do, I help coach organizations and leaders, and do in order to bring in, but on the flip side, I also raise money because I'm trying to bring services to people who oftentimes can't afford it or can't do it. And so it's a both and. But you talk to many people like me and leaders, both in for-profit, nonprofit, people who can't afford your services, people who can't afford your services, and everything in between. Talk a little bit about that journey and kind of and for you, like principally oriented, because you wrote a book, 0 to 7 Figures. Yep. And you talk about not more than just simply the numbers, but you talk about kind of the principle of investment. Yep. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, so I want to make sure I understand you correctly. Do you want me to talk more about the book and principle, or you want me to talk?
I want you to start off with kind of the journey and then lead to kind of why, because I know a lot of it is your interaction with leaders, all the interaction with leaders and just the mindset that you have, in which led to kind of the book and how you help with people and some of the principles that you pull out from the book.
Right. Yeah. So you what I realized, Dhati, is that, again, both myself, so that people know when I say what I'm going to say, right, I'm starting with, I had to make some adjustments myself.
Yeah.
Right. So I too was somewhat, quote unquote, put off. Remember, I started off like, I'm going to make millions. And then my pendulum swung the complete opposite direction. Right. And I wasn't really able to bridge how I could really go hard after money the way I wanted to in my previous life. I wasn't able to bridge that with how I could do good. In fact, not just good, but do amazing things for the kingdom. Right. Mm-hmm. So, but as I continued to explore the landscape, I saw how this poverty mindset, as I like to call it, was tripping me up, and it was tripping up many of my peers in the ministry space. And I'm going, man, we don't have to be poor or broke in order to actually do good for the kingdom. And you brought up a great point. What really hit me was when, frankly, man, my wife and my kids were suffering. Mm-hmm. As a result, I constantly telling my wife, no, we can't do this. No, we can't do that. We can't go on this vacation. We can't go on it. And frankly, brother, it was impacting my relationship, which I would repeatedly say was the most precious thing on earth to me, my relationship with my wife and kids. And yet I wasn't positioning the marriage and the family in a way where we could actually enjoy the fruit of the sacrifices we were making. That was really, honestly, Dhati, a major turning point. There were many other things, but it was like, man, I'm not living what I'm actually preaching. I'm preaching to inspire and help others accomplish and be and become, right? And some of my coaching and all. But I'm over here, I'm not able to take my own wife on vacation and do something. And I'm like, bro, this has to change. I want to practice what I preach from a different perspective.
That's good.
From a different lens. And so honestly, it became a goal to go from 0 to 7 figures. And now I'm on the 8-figure track. Hey, I passed the 7-figure mark, bro. I'm going for the 8 and the 9. I'm not stopping at 8. I'm going for the 9. Go ahead. What you gonna say?
No. I love what you're saying, and so because my question becomes, and I want to get to the book and kind of some of the principles, and this may even lead to that, is how do you not swing to the other pin? Like you said, you started on one side and then you swing to the other side. How does you not overcorrect and go back to the other side? And how do you know the difference? Especially as you say, I'm going from 7 to 8 to 9. Like where? How do you know and wrestle with that tension?
Yeah, so I think, philanthropy and generosity, are the antidotes to greed and selfishness, right? And so making sure that I have community and accountability, but more importantly, making sure that generosity and philanthropy are at the forefront of everything I do. And honestly, man, I can genuinely say that. Like my aggression, if you will, my assertiveness toward earning more isn't just so I can do. It's so funny. It's really, my wife teases me all the time, bro. My wife literally she last night said, "You throw that shirt away." Like, I'm tired of seeing you wear a shirt with a hole in it. And it's funny because the more I've earned, the less I spend on material stuff.
Yeah.
I genuinely care for my kids, care for my wife. And I just wanted to travel and see the world because I grew up in poverty. I grew up in the hood in the same zip code and never really saw much of the world. So it was really about me truly experiencing and enjoying my family, Dhati. So I say that to say, right, that ultimately for me, man, it really is. I want to be able to come into a ministry and go, you said you needed 50,000 for what? Gotcha. You said you need 100,000 for what? Gotcha. Like, I want to be that dude. I frankly, I was exhausted with just being the one to ask for that money. I want to be the one to also be able to give.
That's good.
That money and be in position where I can do that. And so I hope that answers your question, that ultimately the root of it is generosity and philanthropy has to remain at the core of who you are.
Imagine a movement where every urban neighborhood has trained, dedicated leaders sharing the gospel and making disciples. Here at Boulevard, we're building a family of urban missionaries made up of poets, pastors, practitioners, and polymaths who are transforming lives where they live, work, and worship. From launching new city hubs to strengthening existing churches and ministries, we're committed to making sound discipleship accessible in every urban context. This year, we're asking for your help to raise $50,000 in the last 50 days to fuel this mission. Your monthly commitment helps us to reach more cities, raise up more leaders, and bring gospel transformation to neighborhoods across America. Together, we can impact our cities one boulevard at a time.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that because even in your book, you talk about this idea of investment versus external accolades, like internal versus external accolades. And the greatest investment is the investment in yourself, right? And you just talk about, and that's kind of what I'm hearing you talk about, is that you didn't lose your North Star in that, and the ability to prioritize yourself, right? Because at the end of the day, right, you are a valuable asset to what you're bringing and what God has deposited in you, and so talk a little bit about that, because how you have taken kind of your journey and some of these principles and life lessons that you've learned in these different spaces, and how you're applying that to leaders today through things like your books. I know it's not just your book, but like things like your book.
Sure. Well, I think the biggest thing is, we talk a lot about, unleashing the greatness that's within all of us. And I'm not suggesting that everyone is going to be wealthy or that everyone is going to have a ton of money. But for many of us, Dhati, there are a slew of us. There are way more than we probably realize of us who God, we are designed to create and make stuff and create and make new things in the earth. And we have to remember, we live in a country of capitalism.
Yeah.
Like America's government system is built on capitalism. And man, I say this respectfully, I would rather have a Dhati Lewis in the game excelling at the highest level of capitalism, because I know what you're going to do with the resources. I know that you're not going to go out and just flaunt and flodge and spend 90% on you and 10%, like I know what you would do with the resources if you had them the more you have to give, the more you're going to actually give.
Yeah.
And so what I'm getting at is I spend a lot of my time now trying to help people become their greatest self, not in context of just being more known on a platform, but truly because, man, you can do so much more for the kingdom of God when you're operating in that element of your version of your greatest self.
Yeah, that's good. And really in that place, it puts money and resources in its proper place. It's a tool. It's a tool in the hands of the beholder, and it's all about the investment in that beholder. And that's really, I mean, biblically, it talks about that. It says God gave one talent, 2 talents, 5 talents, right? And what I love about the parable is that he says to God, it's all little, right? So whether you're a 5 talent guy or 2 talent guy or a 1 talent guy, in God's economy, all of it's little, because whether you're $1 million, $10 million, $100 million person or $1 billion person, it's all little to God. But it's really what he's judging us on is what we do, right? And talk about, we have to move, and oftentimes say we got to move from a spending mentality to an investment mentality. And that's what we're talking about. Like, what are we investing in? And I think that is a critical piece, in there, but Flynn, talk about this a little bit, because a lot of times when people say, and I love your story, and because you're a product of it, but people always say, man, well, that sounds good for someone who has it, but I don't have it. And so it's sort of like the doctor who says, I'm a doctor, but don't do what I did in order to become a doctor. It's like, well, that's easy to say now that you're the doctor and you can kind of do things, but what about me who doesn't have it and is struggling and all that? And there's a proverb that talks about that. It talks about, don't make me too poor so that I end up stealing, or don't make me too rich that I end up, neglecting you. And so kind of talk about kind of like those investment in yourself so that you can keep yourself centered in the North Star, and, talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because you do that is another great point, Dhati, that I should have, and I'm very transparent. So one of the things I should have said was, I don't invest in anything or anyone more than I invest in myself. So I'm a product of tens of thousands of dollars, and that is not an exaggeration, of therapy, a personal therapy, marriage therapy associated with my kids, with my relationship with my mom, my dad, bro, I'm a product of a lot of hard work on my own sicknesses and my own challenges and issues, right? And then couple that with coaching, how to be a better business leader, how to be a better nonprofit leader, how to be a better husband, so I spend countless hours, Dhati, pouring into me first, because I truly believe that in order to be available for everyone else at the level I'm capable, I got to first invest in me. And that's real. It does matter to the point in your question earlier, keeping myself grounded, keeping myself, you hear this and it sounds cliche, but bro, the more work I do, the more I go, man, I got so many issues. Like, bro, you ain't all that, like I'm saying, that's me looking in the mirror going, man, with all the therapy you had, don't you think you'd be over that issue by now? Like, it's a constant reminder that the grace of God really is the thing that covers you, and it's the only reason that you're in the position you're in. So don't you ever forget, success, fame, money, don't you ever forget that is literally the grace of God that is covering you. And Dhati, it actually makes me more grounded. It is literally why my wife had to make me throw away that t-shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are like, talk about that. Like, I mean, you talked about your wife, but what are some other practices or disciplines to keep yourself? I oftentimes say we discipline ourselves not because we're strong, we discipline ourselves because we're weak, right? And oftentimes we need to, they're reminders of that. What are some disciplines that you do in practice that helps you stay grounded, in the grace of God, not in the works that you can produce with your hands?
So every single morning, without exaggeration, the first thing I do literally before I get out of the bed is study the word of God, and I'm in the book of Luke right now, studying the book of Luke, reading Proverbs regularly. And then after that, and me, I work out every day. Like, that's not an exaggeration. Every day is literal every day, because I'm working off the stress and the problems and the challenges and the weight of all the things that I have going on. Right. And so those are just a couple of examples of like self-care, biblical framing and foundation, workout, and then my reading. So I used to read a book a week, but I got way too much going on now. So now I do a book every 2 weeks, So I'm doing, 20 plus books, 26 books or so a year. Right. And so that's a way of me really staying connected and staying rooted in these are the things that keep you grounded, that keep your feet on the ground, no matter how much quote unquote success you actually have in your life. And not to mention, I'm married to a sister from the hood. So she helps keep me grounded too, Dhati.
Yeah. Hey, I know it's nothing like a spouse. It's nothing like your wife.
Yeah, no, I know.
Keeps you grounded. No, I love it. Yes.
I know Angie. I know.
Yes. You know it. Absolutely. Whenever you start feeling good about yourself, start smelling yourself, you're just like, okay, bring that on back here,
Absolutely. So, but in all sincerity, I have a personal board of directors. Mm-hmm. So there really are people in my life, man, who I lean on. 2 of them are in their 80s, and that's not an exaggeration. One is 83, one is 82, one is in his 60s. And so, man, I lean on people, Dhati. The gift, the blessing of being born to a teenage mother in poverty is that I wouldn't be here if I didn't lean on others, right? I would be a product of my hood.
Yeah.
And I'm still a product of my hood, but you get what I'm saying. Meaning I would still be in the hood, if not dead, candidly.
Right.
But so I had to reach out for help and ask for help. So I'm the guy who is not afraid to go, bro, I'm struggling. I'm going through some things. Hey, I got a hand up. Somebody help me. And one of those examples was again, moving from this poverty mindset to a wealth mindset. It's like, bro, I got all of these wealthy people around me. Bro, pick up the phone, go to lunch, go to breakfast, lean on them, read, study, dig in and learn, how to become wealthy, and doing it in a way to stay grounded, right? So who are the people in my life, Dhati, that have acquired wealth, yet they still have remained, servants of the kingdom of God, and they don't lead with, man, this is the wealthiest person in my inner circle. Literally, for example, these 2 men in their 80s, and I want to say that most people would think they're poor. You hear it all the time, but if you ran across them, you might try to donate to them based on what they're wearing and how you literally would have no idea how many millions of dollars these guys are actually sitting on. And when I say, they're in my inner circle. Like if I call as soon as I hang up with you, they're going to answer.
Yeah, no, that's good. No, and that's helpful. And so as you've been talking to people, and you've been in this journey and been in this game for so long and have seen many different leaders and all types of leaders, what are some of the people that get caught up? Like, what are some of the traps, the traps that you have seen take place that have caught up those? Hebrews chapter 12 talks about run the race set before you with endurance, not tripping over. So that so easily entangles us, right? So what are some of those traps as believers that went out with same ambition, same intentions that you have, but you have seen maybe trip up in that pursuit?
Yeah, I think that, and this gonna sound so basic, Dhati. It's gonna sound so basic. The basic lust of the eyes, lust of the flesh, lust of the heart, right? Those fundamental things so, all right, again, cliche, we've heard this before, but money only amplifies who we actually already are on the inside. Yeah. Let me be brutally honest and say, had I not done all the work in therapy and my accountability groups and all, man, money would have just simply been a tool for me to buy more stuff for myself and be running the streets and running the nightclubs and all the stuff I was doing when I was a college student and not saved and not walking with Jesus, right? So the conversion, only how I view money now, my relationship with money now, is only a product of all the work I've done for my inner man. And so I would say that it's for those of us who aren't really truly focused on developing that inner character and that inner man, like, God, if you really were to bless me with these resources, who would I be? Who am I? How would that be amplified? How would who I am be amplified in the midst of you writing me a big check? That's metaphorical, right? And so I think most of us need to just be brutally honest with our character and assess, man, honestly, what's going on with your eyes, your heart? What do you lust after right now? Like, be brutally honest. Find somebody that you can actually have a brutally honest conversation about. Bruh, honestly, if I had a lot of money, real talk, here's what I'd be doing with it. And I think we all have to answer that honest to God question.
Good. Yeah. And you need someone to help, that you feel safe, but also need to help draw that out, because sometimes we're not used to being and telling the truth about what's going on inside of us. And so, because we haven't had, but we're real good at performing and doing, and we don't give space, because, especially oftentimes, because as soon as you are brutally honest with certain people, then they want to go into like fix it Felix mode, just like fixing you instead of giving you space to be honest so that we can go somewhere. And so let me just end with this. When you think about this concept, like, let's just imagine we're talking to a bunch of people who are either in ministry but they're thinking about like trying to get resources. And so they're thinking about getting, whether it's a side hustle or shifting from ministry to doing business as mission, right? What steps would you take? Imagine someone like me that is going from full-time ministry to, vocational work. Sure. Right? What steps would you say, do this, this, and this? And it can be as broad or as narrow, like as you want to get, for some people to consider.
So let me, that was a setup for, honestly, the book, 0 to 7 Figures, my book was literally written with that in mind, because, again, I was the formerly youth ministry guy who has now been blessed to run several multi-million-dollar businesses. Hey, we're doing pretty good, right? As a family. And so I've been on that journey from how do you go from concept of something to bringing it to life, expressing it, and actually literally walking in the dream that you dreamt about, years ago. And I'm blessed to say that I'm literally walking in it. So first and foremost, take $20 if you can and pick up the book, right? Because I literally take you through a step-by-step process. And it's not MBA language. It's not big term business language. I'm from the hood, from a teenage mom in poverty in Memphis. So I wrote it with that in mind. Like, I'm not trying to MBA you to death. I want to make the language so basic that my homies Pookie and Ray Ray can pick the book up and they can read it and go, bruh, I can go start a business from scratch. So that's the first. But giving a couple of principles here, is, I think oftentimes we miss some of the most basic fundamental things, such as, okay, so what is my mission? What is my vision? What are my core values? Do I have a strategic plan? It sounds boring to a lot of people, but it's really the thing that ultimately will drive your success long term if you're willing to get up every day and walk in the thing that you say you actually envision. So it might be, okay, let's make it real basic. I'm a great cookie maker, or I bake great cakes. So you might literally say, I want to sell 1,000 cakes. Okay. So take a step back and sit down and think about what is all the things I need to have in place in order for my dream of selling my first goal of selling 1,000 cakes. What are all the tools and things I need to have in place in order for that to happen? Something as simple as picking up the phone and calling a cake maker that would be willing to mentor you and come alongside you, or someone who's done another product in a food services category that doesn't see you as a threat, right? Observing businesses that are successful in your space and actually taking the time to model yourself after them. I mean, those are just a few. It's scary fundamental, Dhati, is what I'm trying to say to people. Yeah. We want to skip right to the end result. I want to be a millionaire today. Like, I got an idea and now I want to be a millionaire. Yeah. And you miss that you got to sell your first cake in order to get to 1,000 cakes.
That's good. Yeah. That's good. I oftentimes tell people, it makes complete sense. I oftentimes tell people, don't overestimate what you can do in a year, but don't underestimate what you can do in 5. Yes. Right. And I think that's kind of what that person was just like, how do you take that first step? How do you take those steps? And I love, like you said, the book helps you to walk that path in the process of doing it. And if you take some of these other things that Flynn has been talking about, putting around you mentors, investing in self, those things are, critical. And so that's I said, this is a challenge. Your first investment, go get the $20 book. Yep. Go get the book and invest and make that investment in yourself. Take it over this Christmas break and just read it. And then basically this can set the trajectory for your year 2025. Because, one of the things that I consistently say by my boulevard, is that I'm thinking about the year 2100. And in the year 2100, my oldest son, DJ, will be 94 years old. My middle son, Braden, will be 93. And my youngest son, Nathaniel, will be 92. And I want to know, what am I doing today that's going to impact not only just them, but their kids' yep. Right? And I think oftentimes we have to shift from a spending mentality to an investment mentality. And people like Flynn, who has journeyed this journey and walked this walk, right, who is one of those 5 talent guys. So you may be not a 5 talent, you may be a 2 talent or 1 talent, what it is, but it's more than just about that. It's about the money, because it's all little to God, but it's about how you steward it, and and how you make you make that money, you invest that money. It says, and I think that is the key. And so I'm grateful for you, Flynn. I'm grateful for the labor you guys go and invest in this book. And and I think that we as a body of Christ can start investing more in urban missionaries and, in the work, as we have been called to places that we've come up and we've been raised in. And so, and I think I think that's critical. So thank you, sir.
Thank you, brother. Thanks for hosting me, man. I appreciate you. Always a joy to be with you, man.
Likewise. Until next time, this is another episode of This Is My Boulevard. Peace.